Welcome to Net Zero. I'm Sofia Lana. I'm from Spain. What students learn about climate change school today will directly impact climate actions for decades to come. Why then are millions of American students learning mixed or full messages about the climate problem that will dictate their future? What are the strategies and solutions needed to get the US climate change curriculum on track? Emmy-winning investigative journalist Katie Worth has spent years researching this problem. Her new book, Miseducation, How Climate Change is Taught in America, is essential reading for anyone who cares about climate change. The United Nations has called climate change the biggest threat modern humans have ever faced. How could a science-based curriculum on climate change impact the US race to net zero?
So I'm actually from a town called Chico, California, far northern California, and it is the neighbor of a town that burned to the ground. Paradise, California burned to the ground in 2018. And, I wound up in a school of kids who were all evacuees. So like their houses would all burn down and they were now displaced into Chico. And they were learning about climate change in their 7th grade science class. This is some months after the fire. And, it's a very conservative town, even though it's California. There are some very conservative parts of California. And so a lot of them, if they'd heard anything about climate change, they'd heard that it was a hoax or that it wasn't real, that it was being exaggerated. And so some of these kids brought that into class, and the teacher, I just thought, handled it really beautifully, where it can be really confusing when 2 different people that you trust are telling you 2 different things. That's a really hard thing to navigate and figure out what's happening and why you're getting this different information. And so it's okay to be confused about that. So if the kids were worried about climate change, the parents became more worried about climate change. And that was especially true with little girls and fathers. And it was especially true in conservative families. So it's kind of a way educating kids, like then they come home and that's what you're talking about at dinner, and it's like has this effect of having, affecting far more people than just the kids that you're educating. So education can be a really powerful intervention for the climate.
As you look around the United States, where do you see the most innovative work being done in the climate change curriculum now?
One thing that I think is really powerful is there's a program called Climb Time in Washington State. So in the US, how it works is every state gets to determine their own education. There's no national curriculum. And so it's different than a lot of countries that way. But in Washington State, they've just funded a program to give every teacher training about how to incorporate climate into their classrooms. Like climate is such a sprawling problem that it can fit into all kinds of different disciplines. And, the problem is a lot of teachers themselves don't know that, or, didn't learn about it themselves in school. They may not really even fully understand the issue, let alone have ideas about how to incorporate it in their classrooms.
Many schools around the world want to teach climate change more urgently. And also one survey in the US showed that 3 out of 4 teachers want to start immediately. But with this lack of training, how we can systems approach this goal in the most effective way?
There's a lot of resources out there already. There's a website called cleannet.org, I believe, and it's an organization that's been put together to actually assess climate curriculum, and they've gone through like 30,000 of, or something like that, some huge number of climate resources, and pared it down to the ones that they think are like not outdated, and address it in a way that seems robust. And they're all on that site. They're all there. So it's like 800 resources for every every grade, every subject.
You have other messages or takeaways for our audience to the importance of climate change curriculum?
There is hope on this issue, right? Like, we may be locked into a 2-degree world, but we're not locked into a 4-degree world yet. And we've made progress, actually. Like, I know it doesn't feel like it, but there was a time when we were looking at a 5 or 6-degree world, and like, that's probably not in the cards. I don't know. There has been, like, the efforts have not been fruitless, and they have not been anywhere near enough, right? Like, they have not made enough of an impact, but they still could. There's still room and for reining in the worst of the impacts. And so figuring out a way to push for those changes and in a way that feels empowering, energizing, which will be different for every person, I think can really help stave off the fear and that kind of dread that a lot of us, and hopelessness that a lot of us feel. And like, the hopelessness is not unwarranted. Like, it's scary, but it's also not the entire truth. I truly believe that, like, figuring out some action that you can take and some group you can belong to, can participate in, some movement that you can be behind, you know, and a community that you can be involved with that's caring and making changes about this, that is like a way through some of that dread and fear.
Today we had the honor to count with Katie Ward, an amazing, enthusiastic journalist that has proven that what scientific community approaches about climate change are not a thing related with colors, economical stages, ideologies. It's something that involves all of us. So we really encourage you to read her book, Miseducation, How Climate Change is Taught in America. I am Sofia Lana. Thank you so much.